A pleasant day to every one of you. I'm Laika VMAO Publica and I'm going to discuss about the cultural values. So, these are the core principles or ideals that an entire community or society is based around. While values are learned and passed down through generations and varies by culture. So, there are two important frameworks that I'm going to differ later on. The first one is Geert Hofstede and the second one is the Globe Studies. Next slide, please. But before we delve deeper into the discussion, let us know about who is Hofstede. So, the picture that you see is Geert Hofstede. He is an influential Dutch researcher in the fields of organizational studies, organizational culture, and cultural economics and management. He is also a well-known pioneer in his research of cross-cultural groups and organizations. In the late 1970s, Geert Hofstede developed a widely referenced approach to analyzing cultural variations. And Hofstede also surveyed more than 116,000 IBM or International Business Machines employees in 40 countries about their work-related values and found that managers and employees varied on 5 value dimensions of national culture. So in this slide, I will be going to discuss about the 5 different value dimensions of national culture. So this is Hofstede's framework. The first one is power distance. So ito ay yung kung gaano tinatanggap sa isang bansa yung hindi pantay na kapangyarihan. So basically kapag mataas yung power distance, mas tinatanggap nila yung malaking agwat between sa mayayaman and sa may hirap. And kapag mababa naman yung power distance, mas binibigyan nila ng importance yung equality and the equal opportunity para sa lahat. The second one is individualism versus collectivism. So from the word individual, mas gusto ng tao na kumilos mag-isa and unahin yung karapatan ng bawat isa. And collectivism naman is binibigyang halaga nito yung group and community. So mas inaasahan ng bawat isa yung support and protection from its group. The third one is masculinity versus femininity. So ito ay kung about sa kung gaano katagal yung traditional na papel ng lalaki at ng babae sa lipunan. So basically kapag mataas ang masculinity sa isang bansa is ibig sabihin nito hiwalay pa rin yung trabaho ng lalaki sa babae. So basically mas dominant yung lalaki sa lipunan and mas binibigyang halaga yung kapangyarihan and pagkontrol sa mga lalaki. And kapag mataas naman yung femininity, meron silang pantay na tingin between sa lalaki and sa babae. So walang gaanong pagkakaiba sa papel nila sa lipunan. So basically, pantay yung opportunity ng bawat isa. The next one is uncertainty avoidance. So dito naman, kapag mataas daw yung uncertainty avoidance is hindi komportable yung bawat isa sa mga uncertain situation. Mas gusto nila yung maraming batas and maraming rules. And nag-aalala din sila sa mga certain changes. And kapag mababa naman yung uncertainty avoidance ng isang bansa or organization, is tanggap nila yung mga yung mga uncertain situation and hindi sila masyadong strict sa rules, mas handa silang tumanggap ng changes and handa rin silang mag-risk. And lastly, the fifth one is the long-term versus short-term orientation. Long-term orientation is mas nakatuon sila sa future, syempre. Mahilig silang mag-ipon, matyaga, and mas binibigyan nila yung importance ng tradition. And hindi sila basta-basta sumusuko. While dito naman sa short-term orientation, mas naka-focus sila sa present, like live in the moment yung perception nila. And madaling tanggapin nila yung mga certain changes. And hindi rin sila masyadong nababahala sa mga promises, ganon. And additionally, Hofstede proposed an additional dimension, which is the indulgence and restraint. So when we say indulgence, ito yung merong kalayaan yung bawat isa. Like, binibigyang emphasize nito yung happiness sa buhay. Like, enjoy life yung motto. Mas malaya yung tao, ganun. While restraint naman is yung limitation, ganun. Maraming mga social rules, mahigpit sa mga pamantayan ng lipunan, and kontrolado yung kilos ng tao. So, since na-define na natin yung 5 different cultural values ni Geert Hofstede, let us proceed on how do different countries score on Hofstede's dimension. So, an example of power distance, yung mataas na power distance is yung bansang Malaysia. Sa Malaysia, mandatory na magbow kapag kakausapin ng boss. Yung government servants naman is kailangang mag-wear ng uniform na nakasuot ng batik design bilang respect dun sa hierarchy. And when it comes to promotion naman, nagaganap ito kapag tuwing Ramadan. So, mas priority nila yung mga Muslims. And lastly, when it comes to hiring processes, is usually tinitingnan nila yung family background, hindi lang yung credentials. An example of low power distance naman is yung bansang Denmark. Bakit? Dahil sa Denmark is flexible yung working hours nila. Yung boss and the employee naman is pwedeng mag first name basis. Meron silang minimum 5 weeks paid vacation mandatory. When it comes to parental leave naman, yung father and mother is pareho silang merong 1 year paid leave. And lastly, meron silang benefit na union protection na sobrang malakas talaga. Next one is individualism. So, an example of country naman dito is yung bansang USA. Sa USA, meron silang at-will employment. So, pwede ka ma-hire or fire anytime. They also have health insurance linked sa employment, and hindi ito universal. So, next thing naman is sa USA, meron silang kultura ng networking and personal branding. When it comes to salary naman, yung salary negotiation nila is expected na yun, and hindi ganun ka-offensive. And lastly, meron silang capitalist healthcare system. So, the next one is collectivism. An example of country naman ng collectivism is yung Guatemala. Sa Guatemala is mas dominant yung pamilya sa kanila, like yung family businesses doon is mas dominant. Yung hiring processes nila is usually through referrals. And yun nga, since pamilya sila, yung extended family nila is madalas yun lang din yung mga nagiging katrabaho lang din nila. Sorry. So, basically yung business decisions nila is naka-base totally doon sa family consensus. And lastly, yung nepotism sa kanila is considered as normal, and hindi nila ito tinitake as negative. So, ayun. The next one naman is masculinity. An example of country naman ng masculinity is mas kilala kasi yung Japan dito. Sa Japan, mandatory yung drinking sessions with boss after work, while yung mga babae naman is expected na mag-resign kapag nagkaasawa or nagkaanak. Meron din silang salaryman culture. So, dito is total dedication yung nangyayari sa company. And meron din silang lifetime employment sa traditional companies. And lastly, yung corporate ranking nila is naka-base dun sa age and hindi doon sa mismong performance. An example naman ng mataas na femininity is or merong gender equality na bansa is yung bansang Sweden. Bakit? Sa Sweden kasi meron silang 480 days na parental leave, so pwede itong paghatian ng mag-asawa. Meron din silang minimum na 6 hours work per day, mandatory gender balance sa board of directors, equal pay legislation is strictly na ini-implement nila, and yung work-life balance nila is yung parang pinakapangunahing karapatan talaga nila. So, the next one is, an example of high uncertainty avoidance naman is yung bansang Greece. Sa Greece kasi, yung mga public sectors, yung mas preferred nila is yung mga public sector jobs. So, sobrang maraming bureaucratic requirements na kinakailangan. And yung job security nila is mas importante kaysa doon sa salary nila. And yung yung early retirement nila is optional yun. And lastly is detailed written contracts sa lahat ng transaction. So, ganun yung nangyayari sa kanilang bansa. So, kapag kapag low uncertainty avoidance, an example of country naman nito is yung bansang Singapore. Sa Singapore, meron yung meritocracy na tinatawag is a national principle sa kanila. Yung mga foreign talents is welcome sa kanila, and mabilis sila tumanggap ng mga certain changes, ganun. Like, nagkakaroon sila ng rapid policy changes, and ina-allow din naman ito ng government. Yung government naman nila is sumusupport sa mga startups. And lastly is performance-based compensation ang nangyayari sa kanila. Next one is yung bansang Hong Kong is an example of long-term orientation. Sa Hong Kong naman kasi, yung education investment is sobrang mataas yung rate sa kanila. Yung real estate naman sa kanila is yung pinakang pangunahing investment naman. While yung multi-generational wealth planning is binibigyan din nila ng importance yun. Yung strong savings culture, ayan. And lastly, yung entrepreneurial mindset nila. While ang example naman ng short-term orientation is yung bansang Pakistan. Sa Pakistan, meron silang remittance economy, like survival-based financial decisions, multiple job or sideline is normal yun sa kanila. Yung mga extended family naman is ina-allow in financial support system, and less formal retirement yung nangyayari sa kanila, ganon. So, next slide. The next one is the insights from Hofstede's framework. So basically, sinasabi dito is meron daw malaking pananaliksik na ginawa sa mahigit 200,000 na tao about sa cultural values ni Hofstede. So ito yung mga na found out nila. Una is lahat ng 5 original na dimension ni Hofstede is pantay-pantay lang yung importance sa paghuhula ng magiging results sa work. Pangalawa is mas maganda yung result kapag una tinitignan yung values ng bawat individual kesa pangalawa aakalain na lahat ng tao sa isang bansa is pare-pareho ang values dahil lang sa kilala yung bansa nila sa ganito ganyan. So para mas clear, an example of this is hindi lahat ng Pilipino is collectivist. Hindi rin lahat ng Amerikano is individualist, and hindi rin lahat ng Japanese is mahilig sa mga rules, 'di ba? So, yung message nito is magandang guide yung framework daw ni Hofstede. Pero hindi dapat i-stereotype yung tao base sa kanilang bansa. So, dapat tinitignan pa rin yung pagkakaiba-iba ng bawat tao kahit na magkapareho pa rin sila ng bansa based on their cultural values. So, dapat doon sa cultural values sila nagre-rely. Now, let's move on to the GLOBE framework. So, GLOBE means Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness. So, basically, ang ibig lang sabihin nito is, dito, yung values daw is natututunan. Unlike sa personality na genetic yung pinagmulan. Pangalawa is, yung values can be passed from through generations to generations, and nagkakaiba ito depende sa kultura ng isang tao. So meron dalawang primary na studies about sa different cultural values. Yung mga una is yung yung study ni Geert Hofstede, and pangalawa is yung GLOBE studies nga. Yung GLOBE studies is nag-start nung 1993. And nagtatag sila ng 9 dimension kung saan is nagkakaiba yung mga kultura. And meron din namang ilang pagkakahawig sa dimension ni Hofstede. So yung primary na pagkakaiba ng GLOBE framework is yung pagdadagdag nila ng mga dimension katulad ng humane orientation and yung performance orientation. And lastly, yung GLOBE framework is nagpapahiwatig siya ng pagkakaiba ng cultural practices, or yung what we mean by cultural practices is yung kasalukuyang ginagawa, and yung values naman is yung mga ina-aspire na pagpapahalaga ganon. Next one is comparison of Hofstede's framework and the GLOBE framework. So, it started in 1993, yung Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness, and it came in cross-cultural study across 62 countries. So, there are 9 cultural dimensions nga sa GLOBE studies. So, yung pagkakaparehas ng GLOBE framework sa kay Hofstede's framework is basically yung power distance, individualism and collectivism, uncertainty avoidance, gender differentiation, and future orientation. So, pares lang silang merong ganun. So, bali nagkakaiba lang sila dahil merong dinagdag yung GLOBE framework na humane orientation, or yung sinasabing new, or rewards, altruism, and kindness. And yung pangalawa is yung performance orientation, or sinasabi naman nitong rewards excellence and improvement. So here is the framework. So kung makikita naman natin is halos same lang naman sila ng ng framework ni Hofstede and yung Globe Studies. Next slide. So, ayan, makikita naman natin dito sa Globe framework is yung distinction nga nila na dinagdag is yung humane orientation and performance orientation. So, next slide na. To summarize it all, so the personality is so important in organizational behavior. Although hindi naman ito na discuss totally yung lahat, meron namang mga new studies na nagpapakita kung paano mas mahalaga yung personality sa iilang situations. So, yung diniscuss ng members ko sa group before, yung Big Five and the Dark Triad frameworks, ito yung mga example ng mga important na pag-unlad sa pag-unawa ng isang personality. So, bawat katangian ng personality is may pros and cons. So, wala naman talagang perfectong combo, 'di ba? And yung pag-unawa sa personality, it can help in order for you to understand yourself and to understand also the others. And in order for you also to help on how you judge other people, kung tama ba to or angkop pa rin ba sa trabaho mo. And yung values is nakakaapekto rin at nagpapaliwanag sa mga attitude, sa pag-uugali and yung perception, and nagkakaiba-iba sa kultura, pero maaring hindi naman ito sumusunod, hindi naman ito sundin ng isang tao. So basically, depende pa rin talaga sa tao. So, these are the implications for managers. So, sa madaling salita, kailangan daw na kailangan na isaalang-alang yung fit ng mga applicants and employees sa work and organization, and kailangan gamitin yung personality traits tulad ng Big Five and Dark Triad sa pag-screen at pagkuha ng mga employees or pag-select ng mga future employees, ganun. Pangatlo is kailangan gamitin yung MBTI sa training and development para mapabuti yung communication and yung pag-unawa. Pang-apat is kailangan ipakita yung ideal na personality and values ng organization sa recruitment in order for them to maka-attract ng mas appropriate na candidate or employees. Ganon. So, kailangan rin nila na unawain yung impluensya ng situational factor sa pag-uugali ng isang tao. And lastly, yung pag-unawa sa cultural values is nakakatulong din sa communicate sa iba't ibang or pakikipag-interact sa iba't ibang cultures. So, on my last part, there is an article na nagsasabi na millennials are more narcissistic than their parents daw. So, sa madaling salita, yung article na to is tungkol sa pagko-compare sa millennials, or basically yun yung mga pinanganak noong 1981 to 1996 and yung baby boomers or yung kanilang mga magulang. So, merong mga magagandang katangian naman daw yung mga millennials. Una is magaling sila sa technology. Kung mapapansin natin, yung mga millennials na ngayon is mateki sila. And bukas din yung mga isipan nila sa lipunan. Like, active sila sa community, nakikipag-collaborate sila or coordinate sa different organizations. And lastly, pinapalaga nila yung work-life balance. Pero, may isang malaking weaknesses din sila. Sinasabi dito na mas narcissistic daw or sobrang pagmamahal sa sarili yung mga millennials compared to the baby boomers or yung kanilang mga magulang. So, there are studies na nagpapatunay na mas mataas daw yung tingin nila sa kanilang mga kakayahan. Like, mas marami yung nagsasabi na sila daw ay magiging una, napakagaling na asawa. So, meron daw 56% versus 56% ngayon versus 37% noong 1980 na nagsasabi ng ganito. Pangalawa is naniniwala sila na napakagaling nilang magulang. So, merong 54% versus 36% noon na nagsasabi nito. And lastly is napakagaling daw nilang manggagawa or workers. So, there are 65% versus 49% noon ang nagsasabi nito. So, bakit daw nangyayari ito? So, according kay Cliff Zuken, is lumaki yung millennials na palaging sinasabihan na kaya mo ang lahat, kaya mo yan, ganyan, ganito. So, according naman kay Jean Twenge, hindi ganito yung pagpapaliki noong 1960s. So, ano naman yung magiging possible na problems nito sa work? Una is mabilis silang maburyong. Pangalawa is masyado silang self-centered. And lastly is mahirap silang pagtiwalaan sa mahabang projects. Ganon. And on the counterpart, yung pagpupuna daw sa ganong aspect tungkol sa mga bagong generation is hindi na bago. Ito daw yung isa rin sa pinaka traditional na phenomena na nakikita na mula pa noong panahon ng mga Griego and sa Biblia pa. According yan kay Prof. Capilli. So, sabi niya is wala daw ebidensya na ang mga millennial is iba. So, basically, dinefine niya sila as sila daw ay simpleng mas bata lang. Ganon. So, kapag kino-compare natin yung personality ng mga millennial and baby boomers noong sila ay magkaparehas lang ng edad, is makikita na halos magkatulad lang naman sila. So, in other aspects, yung mga millennials is possible na mas kaunti yung narcissistic kesa sa mga baby boomers ngayon. So, mas tama raw na ihambing yung mga tao sa parehong stage ng buhay kesa ihambing yung magkaibang generation. So, may mga taong nasa 20s na mas narcissistic kesa sa mga nasa 50s, and yung mga millennial na nasa 20s is meron ding mga hindi narcissistic kesa sa mga baby boomers noong sila ay nasa 20s. So, ganon yung pinopoint lang ng article na to. And that's all for my part. And may I call the last reporter? Thank you.